Did this get to you emotionally? Were you angry? Were you depressed? Were you helpless? I mean, how did you feel?
Well, what happened was this, you know, it took me 7 years to get my focus and normalcy to a certain extent back. 7 years. And it wasn't until my uncle sent me some color pencils and some paper, and he says, hey, if you can reclaim your talent, you can reclaim your life. And I started drawing. And the drawing for the next 20 years is what kept me strong, what kept me going.
Art was important to you before this all happened, right?
Oh, yeah, I went to performing arts for art, you know, and, I've been drawing since 4 years old. I won an art contest, but for 7 years, I hadn't drawn anything, painted anything. And it wasn't until my uncle sent me those supplies that my spirit started growing, because prison is a place designed to break your spirit. And, I took to the art again, and it saved my life.
Tell me about those first 7 years, because you said it took you 7 years to get situated. What was going on those first 7 years? What was that like?
Well, it was hopelessness. All my appeals was denied. How is this even possible? The evidence was submitted to all of the courts, the appellate courts, the federal courts, even the Supreme Court. How is this possible that all of these educated people could ignore 8 eyewitnesses in a confession, a videotape confession, and we had proved that these officers committed perjury. The prosecutor committed prosecutor misconduct, and nobody wanted to fix this. It was almost like everybody's protecting each other. I do know that the system is not designed to equip for a poor person. It's just not equipped to represent a poor person. And you have to have money to fight these cases. And without that, a public defender is just not going to work here. It's just not enough to fight the other opposition, the other side. It's just not going to happen.
Well, it's often been said that you're entitled to the best defense money can buy.
I mean, this is the American way. This is how it goes, and it shouldn't be this way because, these are human rights, not just constitutional violations or human rights violations, but, civil rights violations, and, this is why I started my foundation to fight against this, to make the system more fair, just, and equal.
You said that at one point your uncle sent you these pencils, and when you got them, did you feel like drawing right away, or did they sit there for a month? What happened?
My art supplies collected dust for about 5 to 6 months, Dr. Phil.
Really?
I procrastinated. Yeah, I procrastinated, And then one day I just said, you know what, let me try see if I can draw a rose, and I drew this rose, and all the other inmates was like, you know how to draw? I was embarrassed. I told none of them I was an artist. I kept it to myself. And they said, you know how to draw? I said, a little bit. So, oh, no, you really know how to draw, And that kind of gave me that inspiration that I needed. And there was no turning back after that.
You were at Attica, right?
Oh, yeah, one of the worst prisons in the world. I was there for 23 years out of the 27 years.
Good Lord. What's the worst thing about Attica?
Well, the abuse, the assaults. Officers killed inmates in there. It was really bad. It got better the last 3 years before I left because they installed cameras. Finally, after 30-something years, they installed cameras, and that cut down on 90% of the assaults that occurred, and officers still wouldn't stop. And 4 of them got arrested by the FBI. And this is when we haven't had any assaults there, and I say in the last 3 years. And I say we because I talked to about 10 inmates continuously, almost every day, every other day. That's still there in Attica.
Were you assaulted while you were there?
I wasn't. And I'm going to tell you why. I was very close to being assaulted, but I was a model prisoner. And I realized I had to play chess. I had to be very smart. You could get assaulted if your shoelaces is not tied and you're walking down the hallway, that type of thing. You asshole, tie your fucking shoes. And if you look the wrong way, you're going to get assaulted by 10 officers. It was like, a type of game for some of these officers. Even the decent officers were upset. They were mad, and I had, because I spent so much time there, I spoke to many of them and they said, Dixon, I can't wait to retire. This is just too much. I want to go home safe because, not all of officers were bad. Out of 10 of them, seven were good officers. The 3 were bad. And this is what made the prison bad.
Did you form relationships with any of the guards that was decent?
Oh yeah, I got one right now that I just talked to last week. He's retired. They loved me, man. They loved my artwork. They respected me. And, that helped me out. I mean, I walked out of prison with over 900 drawings that, I never went to solitary, never had a misbehavior report. I was in honor block for 23 years, in that prison.
I'm pretty close with you. I never went to solitary. I had a few minor incidences, but I would echo what Valentino said. There's a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. And, to this day, I still have some relationships with some of them. And it's funny, one of them recently wrote a book about a high profile individual. And he didn't write it under his own name, but I knew exactly who he was because of the conversations I had with him when he was in prison. And we started to communicate recently. But it's so true about how that there are some good ones. I mean, there's one, I'll call him John, who used to say, you guys live here 24 hours a day. I'm here for 8 hours. If there's something I can do with my 8 hours that makes your life a little bit better, that I won't lose my job, I'll do it. He said, because every one of you are human beings. And he had the most respect out of any guard that I ever met. And other guards didn't like it because he treated people equally. And I've always said that if there were more prison guards or correction officers that had that philosophy, there'd be more humanity in prison.
Does it bring back any bad feelings on your part to see a guard or talk to a guard that you had to live with for that long?
For me, Dr. Phil, I ran into 2 of them that worked at Attica, and both of them had this crazy look because they didn't know how I was going to, and I said, hey, man, how you doing? Hope everything's okay. I had to make them feel really easy.
How did they respond when you did that? When you said, hey, how's it going?
They gave me, actually, I ran to 3. Both of them gave me a nod, like, hey, nice, nice to see you. And then one of the guys I seen at a carnival who was really decent with me gave me a hug. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Let me just say one more thing. I've always had a great spirit. I've always loved everybody. I get along with everybody. And prison didn't change that for me. I had my moments where I was bitter and angry and everything, but I can still wake up in the morning and smile and laugh, man. I'm not harping on that stuff. I'm just glad that I made it out. Too many of my friends didn't make it out. Some of them committed suicide.
Did you ever consider that?
Oh, yeah, man. At least once or twice a year. But I knew that I had a bigger purpose, and that's what kept me going.
And what was your bigger purpose?
My bigger purpose was to make my family proud, to leave a legacy, and to change the world in some small way. And I mean, I talk to kids now about making the right choices in the inner city, all of these kids going to prison where I come from, and so for me, that's more fulfilling than anything in the world. And I was also there to help guys get their GED because I was one of the educated ones, to help guys get their GED, to counsel them about making the right choices upon being released. So, hey, for me, it was, I'm blessed, man. That's all I can say.
Marty, did it ever get to you to the point that you thought, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yes and no. I think every time I had a negative court decision, I had a window of about 24 hours where I was beating myself up down, but I knew the legacy wasn't going to be that the murderer of Seymour Arlene Tankleff was their son Marty. And every day I got up to continue fighting because I knew I was going to get out one day and I was going to expose the truth and go on to become a lawyer and make a difference in this world. And I've gone beyond becoming a lawyer. I'm also now the Peter P. Mullen Distinguished Visiting Professor at Georgetown University. I teach a class with my co-professor Mark Howard called Making Exoneree, where Valentino was the first person we walked out. And for me, I can look back and say that, thank God I didn't give up. Because, where would Valentino be today.
Let me say one thing, Dr. Phil. All of us is going to be challenged with something in life. We don't get to decide the challenge. We don't get to decide the test. Whatever hand we're dealt with, we got to deal with it. Mine was 27 years of false imprisonment. Someone else's could be a death in the family or a health issue. When I see a 10-year-old kid dying of cancer that's not going to live to see 11th birthday, hey, man, I got to call my blessings. And that's how I see it. People say, how can you think that way? I'm going to think that way because I see the bigger picture.